Welcome, Alex, to the show. Lovely to have you here. So
Thank you
please
for
do
having me.
absolutely introduce yourself to our listeners and let us know more about you.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, my name's Alex. I am from Milton Keynes. I guess first and foremost, I am a mum to two girls, 6 and 10 years old. And yes, I am a mindset and confidence life coach for teenage girls.
Excellent. So, what inspires you to get into this line of work? What is it about young girls, teenage girls that called you into that profession?
So I did gymnastics as a child myself, and
Oh,
normally when you get to kind of a teenager in those sports, you get offered to become like an assistant coach, which
yeah.
is what happened to me. So when I kind of look back at my career and my life, I have been working with mainly girls in gymnastics, it's
Mm,
normally girls, from the age of kind of 14, 15, 16. And then I moved to cheerleading, and again, I became an assistant coach. So although I was coaching in the sporting capacity, you're still doing the mindset stuff. You're still helping them
yes.
through their sporting blocks. They
Yeah.
bring their external life drama in and their
Oh,
friendships and their
yes.
boyfriends, right? So,
Yeah.
and you're just chatting to them. So I was
Hmm.
doing that from like a really young age, and I found it really easy and loved
Hmm.
it. And then I've done various jobs between now and then. And then I had my own children. And now for the last 4 years, I've worked at a secondary school as a behaviour coach. And
Oh,
that
wow.
is, yeah, that is supporting students with challenging behaviour and social and emotional difficulties. So
Hmm.
lots of coaching, lots of mentoring, listening, helping them work things out,
Mm.
helping them down different avenues. And again, I absolutely loved it. And then going back a little bit in 2020, I had my own self-development journey. I was kind of at a really rubbish place in my own life,
Hmm.
and I basically woke up one morning and thought, I'm done with feeling like this. And as you do, you go to Google,
Yeah.
and I found that solves all the problems.
Yeah.
And well, it really did, because I found myself learning about self-development, and I was opened up to this whole other world that I didn't know existed. And I basically changed my life, my brain, the way I think, how I see things, and got a real understanding of, you are able to create the life that you want. You have the power. And I never knew that before. I just thought life was happening to me, not for me.
Mm.
And my own teenage years were quite tricky, to say the least. And I really think that if I'd had somebody like me back then, helping me, talking to me, teaching me these things, these kind of real core life valuable skills, I genuinely don't think that I'd have made some of the
Mm.
very silly mistakes that I made. So that is my inspiration, is me as a 13, 14, 15-year old who was not okay. Um, and now be able to deliver that and share that, and teaching these children, these teenagers, these lessons now, so that they're using them as they get older into their adult years.
It's that whole thing of being kind of the person that you needed when you were
Yes.
younger, because obviously we had our parents, our mums, and people do what they can. But I never felt that there was somebody who was speaking directly to my experience. It always
Yes.
felt that people were sort of, I guess people were dealing with their own things, aren't they? So, and sometimes your parents might not have the tools to help you get
Mm.
through what you're going through. So, for example,
Yeah.
if a young girl is feeling like depressed or down, I was often told, just try to be happy. And
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
okay, I'll try that. And not
Yeah.
knowing, not having any idea what that even means, what that looks like, what are the tools. So I absolutely think it's about trying to be who I needed when I was sort of younger. But I do you think that obviously in this day and age, it's much more complex than
Oh, yes.
than even maybe 10 years ago. And there's lots of different sorts of pressure. So I'd love to hear kind of your experience and also with the girls that you work with. What are the sort of pressures that girls are facing today, and what are the ways that we can help them sort of overcome those sort of challenges?
Yeah, so obviously, if we go to the big one, which is obviously going to be social media,
Yeah.
it's staying, it's only going to get more, isn't it? It's not going
Hmm.
to go anywhere. And I think that social media is incredible. Without social
Yeah.
media, I wouldn't have this business, probably, nor would you. We're able to talk to people all over the world, see things we're not able to see. So,
Yeah.
absolutely, it has its place. But there's the negative side of it. And I think
Mm.
our teenagers are spending such a huge amount of time on their phones.
Yes.
Um, And comparison is a killer, right? And when they're on TikTok or they're on Instagram, their feed is going to be people living their best life, because that's what we share. And so they're sat there probably feeling a bit rubbish, a bit unmotivated, and they're scrolling and scrolling, and they're just seeing the best selfies, the best hair, the best trainers, the best bags, people on holiday, people with their friends, and they're comparing that, and it's not real. It's not reality. So that is a huge one. And then for that, I would, in my sessions with my girls, we would talk about that, and I would get them to look at their screen time, which is always fun. And sometimes just pulling up their screen time can be real eye-opening for them to be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I was on my phone that amount of time. And then I might set them a mini goal and say, right, we're going to look at this again next week, and we're going to try and get down by 10%. Just to try and get them to make those little changes, and to do a social media cull. Like, if they're following accounts that make them feel miserable or don't inspire them or light up their soul, unfollow them. Just try it. You can always go and follow them again later if you really need to, but just see how it feels. Go and do an unfollow, and then try and follow some accounts that do inspire you and make you happy and make you laugh. So just trying to get that balance right. So definitely social media is a huge pressure.
It really is. And I think the thing with social media as well is that I think when I was growing up, for example, you grew up more in a vacuum, if that makes sense. But now there's so many other voices. So as a parent, for example, there's so many other voices influencing your child, really, that you might not be able to sort of control. Whereas before, you could control it slightly, because there's only sort of like TV and magazines. And the most worrying thing I'd say about social media is that you can find trigger warning. So if somebody is struggling with, say, like an eating disorder, you can find sites and videos that are pro these things. And, you know, that's not what you want your child to be exposed to when they may be struggling with something. So that's one of the things, is that being a parent, really being on top of what your children are taking in, what they're listening to, what they're watching, because it's so easy to access so many different things. So obviously, we know, like you said at the beginning, is great. Social media, it's a tool if you use it in the best possible way, but it also has its dark side. And I think that's just sort of parental responsibility, I suppose, to help your child through that. So I would love to know, you mentioned screen time that you do with your girls. When you look at their screen time, try and get it sort of down by 10%, and sort of help them cull that habit of just scrolling constantly. But what sort of other practical exercises would you say that you use, that you've seen have some success?
So I'm massive into gratitude, to the point where I actually think I bore my clients sometimes.
Is that rolling their eyes? Oh, gratitude.
Here she goes again. Because I say that because for me, that was what really began my self-development journey. I did a book called The Magic by Rhonda Byrne. I don't know if you've heard of her. She did The Secret and then The Magic. And The Magic is a 28-day gratitude practice, and you do it for 28 days solid. Sounds really easy. It's not. It took me 3 times to actually be successful. But honestly, for me, when I actually completed that practice for 28 days, that was when my life changed. So because it had such an effect on me, I start with that. And for some of my clients, it doesn't resonate with them. They give it a try. They do the first initial task that I set them, which is for the first week, every day they've got to write a gratitude list of 10 things, what they're grateful for and why. It's really important we put the why on the end, because sometimes we go through life and we're oblivious to actually how lucky we are for the smallest of things, and it become complacent with it. So I think practicing gratitude is a massive one, and you can do that through lists. You can do that through putting notes on your phone if you're not really a writer. You can do that just by, at the end of the day, before you go to bed at night, go back through your day and think of all the things that went right and what were good for you. So I think gratitude lists are a huge thing. It's going to sound like I love lists, which I do, but another thing would be like writing 50. I love 50 because it's like, it's hard to get 50 things, but if you can get 50 things, it's a real achievement. So writing 50 things that make you amazing. What are the 50 positive things about you? Personal attributes. So are you creative? Are you kind? Do your friends come to you for advice? Do you make a great cup of tea? Anything that you can think of, and try and hit that 50. Because like I said, you can maybe get to 17, 18 easily, And you might be like, oh my God. But if you really sit with it, and maybe you've got to come back to it over a couple of days, depending how like regimented you are with it. But if you can then go back and think, oh my gosh, I've just written 50 things that I'm really good at, like that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then another list would be 50 things that make you happy.
Yeah.
Writing down 50 things that make you happy, and then trying to put as many of those things into your life. Because I think if you're happy, you are confident. If you're unhappy, you're not going to be confident.
Yeah.
So we have to curate
Absolutely.
our lives to make us as happy as possible. And again, those 50 happy things could be as simple as doing a hair mask or a face mask, or painting your nails, or listening to your favorite music, or it could be going bowling, which obviously you need, as a teen, you need someone to pay for that. So have a mixture of things that make you happy. And then when you're feeling a bit rubbish or a bit low, you can try and pick, what can I do that works for my day to day?
Yeah. And the other things I found when I do the workshops with the young girls I work with is that with their self-confidence, self-esteem, when I first ask them what they're good at, a lot of them are like,
don't know.
I'm not really good at anything, or maybe one or two things. And that's because they see what they're good at as, in this world, we celebrate big things. If you're a great singer, dancer, and all that sort of external things. And because you mentioned just now little things like, do you make a good cup of tea, and do babies like you, or are you a good listener, and little things like that really actually make a difference in other people's lives, and in the lives of the people around you, and relationships, and build relationships. Those should be celebrated. Not just, it's great that you can sing, obviously that's a great talent, but what is it about you that's good, that your kindness and your sense of humor. And I think just getting the girls to look at those aspects of themselves is so, so important, because it can make them feel like, oh, actually, I'm okay. I do have these great qualities about me, and that really helps build their self-esteem. Because in this day and age of social media, like you said, you see all these things happening on there. People have, their hair and their makeup and their dancing, and you might think, oh, I can't do that. That's okay. Doesn't mean you're any less than. I wanted to move into sort of peer pressure and peer influence, because obviously with not just girls, but adolescents in general, it's all about sort of fitting in and not being outcast, and really being part of the pack. So, but what other ways can we encourage our young girls to sort of stand out with their individuality and not sort of hide who they are just to fit in with the crowd?
So you said, I think you said something about pack there, being part of the pack. And that's literally something that I love. Is I do this thing called the caveman mentality. And I say to them, billions, trillions, whatever, many million years ago, when we were cavemen, it was vital that we were part of the pack, right? Because if we weren't accepted, if we weren't part of the pack, then we're probably going to die. You're going to starve, you're going to get killed
eaten by some random
right, a saber-toothed lion. You're going to probably die. So you had to do whatever you could to remain in that pack. Now, shooting forward to 2024, there's elements of our brain that still have that caveman mentality, that think that if I'm not part of the pack, I'm going to die. I'm not going to survive. But then you need to take a breath and be rational and stop catastrophizing and think, right, am I going to die? Say, going to the peer pressure thing. If I don't do this thing that these people are gonna that they want me to do, am I gonna die? Am I in danger? And I mean, I really hope the answer to that question would be no.
No.
Yes, I might be outcast. Yes, I might be called a name or whatever, something like that. But my life is not in danger. And do these people have my best interests at heart? The people that want me to do X, Y, Z, do they have my best interests at heart? If all goes wrong here, are they going to have my back? Probably not.
No, that's
and also, like if, say, they have a younger sibling or a younger cousin or someone that's younger they care about, put that younger child in your shoes. And if you knew that, your little brother James is in this situation, would you want him to be peer pressured into it? And what would you say to him? Would just say, walk away, just say no, and just take the hit? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really think it's really effective when you're dealing with like a young person, and you take themselves out of it and just say, say it's somebody else, what would you say to them? Because I think sometimes depersonalizing it makes them see it a little bit different, because then it's not so that the stakes aren't as high, so then you can get what they actually would do or should do in that situation. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I wanted to move on quickly to parents and parental influence, what can parents do to help their daughter build their self-confidence and their self-esteem? And I'd love you to speak especially to mothers, I think, who maybe struggled, because you talked a bit about your own struggles. So sometimes when you see glimpses of your daughter going through certain things, it kind of brings you back to that time. And it can be quite hard to sort of navigate that, because you want the best for them. You want them to not go through what you went through, but then you've got to keep your experiences separate. And that can be hard. Yeah, exactly. So if you just sort of speak to that, how to navigate that whole experience.
Yeah, I think although we're saying to keep it separate from your experience as a teenager, but just check in and be like, how did I feel when I was a teen? Like we said that when we were teenagers, things were a lot different now. So however hard we found our teenage years, the chances are our teens now are finding them tenfold harder. So just have some empathy, first of all, and sit with that. I think looking at your own parenting style is really important. I mean, like I said, I'm a mum to two girls, not quite teens yet, but sometimes I look at myself and I think, oh my gosh, I've been so naggy and so moany and so negative and so overwhelmed today. And that's played out with my parenting, which isn't doing my girls any good. We are mums. We're always going to have elements of that. But if that is right, if that's kind of a higher percentage of your time than not, then you need to look at, right, how can I change this? Am I overworking myself? Am I not filling my own cup enough to fulfill my children? Because if you are negative, moany, naggy, complaining, you're not really opening yourself up for your child to come to you. So try and think, how can I be more calm, more welcoming? I also love recommending to my mums about car talks, because I don't know about you, but sometimes if I'm, was in a difficult place, the last thing I want to do is sit face to face with someone, looking in their eye and talk to them. Whereas when you're in a car, like, your mum's driving and they're, you're both looking at the road. For myself, with my own and my eldest daughter, I do this sometimes. If I know she's not quite right, I'll just bring it up when we go for a drive somewhere, because she feels more open to be able to talk to me when we're not sat staring at each other. And then also, like, going back to that list of 50 things that make you happy, I recommend like sitting down with your daughter or your son and together creating a list of 50 things that make you happy together, and then really being intentional with setting some time aside, because life is crazy, life is busy. Even if you have to put it in your diary and say, right, look, next Sunday, I've got free time between 12 and 3. Let's look at our list of happy and pick something that we want to do. If we've got no money, that's fine. Let's pick something free. If we've got money and we've got some money to spend, let's pick something a bit more extravagant. And it's just about really creating that time. And even if your teen's going to moan and whinge about it, just really don't get stroppy with them. As hard as it is, just keep looking through the lens of love and seeing it through those eyes, I think is a good way to lead.
And I think definitely as they go from that sort of tween to teen age, it's not about being their overbearing sort of parent. I always say you've got to start to come into a place of collaboration. Let's do this together. We're in this together. Let's solve this together. Because as they grow up, they want less and less of your input. So you've got to find a way to sort of influence their decisions, their behavior, without telling them in a way. And it's a really, really delicate balance. But my final question for you, before you can go on and share your social media links and everything, I would love to know what you would say to any young girl now who's struggling with her self-esteem, her self-confidence, even if you could speak to yourself when you were 13, 14, 15. What's the one thing, or maybe two things, that you'd want that young girl to know?
Everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. It might not feel like it right now when you're in that time, but this too shall pass. And think back to a time before when whatever you're struggling with was all consuming you and you thought it was never going to get any better. And just think, try and remember something and think, oh my God, like that's not even in my brain now. That's not even relevant to me anymore. And everything is easier said than done. I get that, but we can only do what we can do. So everything is temporary. Like I literally want to get that tattooed somewhere on me.
I was going to say, put it on a t-shirt or something, because it is so true. Because young people especially, they have this thing of what's happening now is always going to be that way. If I'm not good at something, I'm never going to be good at it. And I just want to scream, you will, you can, you can, But in their mind, it's so, it's like fixed. It's a fixed mindset, isn't it? That
It's
whole
all
thing of
consuming. Yeah,
yes,
living
yes,
it.
that is so
Yeah.
true. Thank you for that. I love that. Definitely get that printed on a t-shirt
I
somewhere.
should, I should, should. And then just the second thing that I'd
Yeah.
recommend that I really, again, I preach massively is
Mhm.
journaling, brain dumping, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, ideally, if you're struggling, you talk to someone in person. You have a friend
Mm.
or a family member or a friend's mum or a school member of staff. But if you don't have that or you don't want to, I genuinely believe that writing, journaling is the free form of therapy. And you
Yeah.
get yourself a
Yeah.
pretty notebook and a lovely pen and you make a nice space for yourself and just write whatever it is that's coming to mind, even if it makes no sense. You've got spelling mistakes, it's messy, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, because I think so often we spend time in our own brain and we can catastrophize and we can just
Yes.
completely lose sense of things. But when you
Hmm.
either say it out loud, you know, you must have said something sometime and been like, now that I say that out loud, it sounds absolutely
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or you write it down and then you think, right, I've written that out, and either that's ridiculous,
Hmm.
it's not even relevant, or it just creates some space. You get the things that aren't needed, that are taking
Yeah.
up capacity inside your brain on the
Yeah.
paper, and then you've created space for things that are important. So definitely trying to talk to somebody in person, and if that's not available, then journaling has really
Yeah.
saved me multiple times.
Absolutely. There's great advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with me today. You know, I love what you do. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And yeah, it was great speaking to you.
Thank you so much.